Number 15. Abby Newman. While shopping drunk at an Alabama Walmart in November 2023, 28-year-old adult film star Abby Newman forgot to scan some items at the self-checkout. Her failure to ring in a coffee mug and a Christmas-themed blanket resulted in her arrest on a theft charge, landing her in jail for 4 days before she bailed out. It was Newman's second time being arrested that year. 6 months earlier, in April 2023, she caught a charge for fighting. But her second arrest proved life-changing when her mugshot went viral. The young mother's neck tattoos caught the attention of internet users from across the United States and beyond, serving as a major career boost for Newman's OnlyFans account. Within a week of her release, she earned a jaw-dropping $24,000, which meant, at the very least, that she would have no problem affording a good defense attorney. Newman's photo first appeared on the Instagram page Mug Shorties, which features mugshots of attractive accused criminals. It spread like wildfire from there, with admirers fawning over the young woman's link and her half-blonde, half-brunette hairstyle. Despite the influx of attention, Newman remained humble. She even said that she didn't think she looked good in the photo, despite being showered with compliments. In one comment, she mentioned how her hair was unwashed and unbrushed, but while Newman saw this as a reason for not looking good, many were stunned by how good she looked, despite being unkempt. Number 14. Taylor Johnson. It's usually embarrassing when someone's mugshot goes viral, but one woman received an unusual dose of flattery after being featured on the Instagram account Mug Shorties in early 2024. A commenter from Houston, Texas, named Taylor Johnson, identified herself as the woman in the mugshot. And while the photo received a lot of compliments, she didn't seem too thrilled about the publicity, writing, "Posting my mugshot 2 years later is crazy. Didn't even ask me." The mugshot was reportedly taken following Johnson's arrest on suspicion of driving while intoxicated and marijuana possession. After appearing on the Mug Shorties account years later, it received more than 45,000 likes practically overnight. And while it's understandable that Johnson was unhappy about her photo being circulated at a time when she had probably put her legal problems behind her, one social media user pointed out that mugshots are public. Nobody needs to ask for permission to post it, although doing so would have admittedly been a welcomed courtesy in this case. Number 13. Controversial Camloops arrest. In August 2023, footage of an intense arrest in Camloops, British Columbia went viral in Canada and beyond. In the video, a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, identified only as D. Tucker, could be seen handcuffing a man on the ground in front of City Hall. According to reports, the man was arrested for causing a disturbance after the officer saw him exiting a nearby vehicle and handed a bag to a woman who was walking her dog. Officer Tucker then approached the woman and appeared to draw his taser, then his gun, as her dog jumped at him. The officer then took the woman to the ground and placed her in handcuffs. Throughout the ordeal, he could be heard swearing and shouting in a seemingly excessive manner. In an era when people are increasingly calling on authorities to stop using unnecessary force with the public, the footage gained widespread criticism from people who believed that the officer was too quick to arrest the woman. The RCMP launched an internal investigation into the incident while reminding the public that its officers are faced with split-second decisions on a daily basis, and that these decisions are often made based on extremely limited information. While the outcome of the investigation is unclear, an RCMP spokesperson confirmed that members of its agency seized drugs at the crime scene. Number 12. Maria Delcarmen Rendon. The October 2021 arrest of a North Carolina woman went viral after footage of the police breaking her car window appeared on TikTok. According to reports, officers in the town of Wake Forest responded to a call about a felony strangulation between two teenagers inside a moving vehicle. The incident involved a male and female party, and the boy allegedly refused to cooperate after police pulled over the driver of the vehicle, 35-year-old Maria Delcarmen Rendon. In the video, an officer could be heard ordering Rendon out of the vehicle and telling her that she was being detained. When she asked why she was being detained, the officer once again ordered her to step out of the car and threatened to smash her window and pull her out of the vehicle if she refused to follow his commands. The cop proceeded to emphasize his point, telling Rendon that she had a matter of seconds to decide whether to comply. He then began counting down from 5. Instead of cooperating, however, the driver told the officer that he needed to slow down before he ended up facing a lawsuit. This did little, if anything, to deter the officer from using his baton to break the window. Shocked by what was happening to her, the driver could be heard complaining about how there was glass all over her, while children screamed and cried in the back seat of the vehicle. Despite the lack of cooperation, the officer pulled Rendon out of the vehicle while a second cop took her to the ground. In the meantime, Rendon handed her phone to one of the kids and instructed them to record what was going on. She was charged with resist, delay, and obstruct, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, driving with a revoked license, and careless and reckless driving. The footage of the arrest quickly went viral, with many people demanding an explanation for the cop's seemingly aggressive behavior. But the police department stood by the officer and allowed him to stay on duty while an internal investigation was carried out. The outcome of the investigation is unclear, which most likely means that the officer was cleared of any wrongdoing and remains on the job. Number 11. Matthew Darwin Howtailing. In early 2024, a 35-year-old Florida man named Matthew Darwin Howtailing was accused of stealing a van from an Amazon delivery driver in Volusia County. He was arrested at a Circle K gas station, roughly 20 miles from where the vehicle was originally stolen. Footage of the harrowing takedown showed deputies approaching the suspect with their guns drawn, while Howtailing raised his hands from inside the van in apparent displays of surrender. As the suspect exited the vehicle and got face down on the ground, the deputies could be heard ordering him to put his hands behind his back. Howtailing was subsequently turned over to the Ormond Beach Police Department. According to the Daytona Beach News Journal, the suspect, who is homeless, claimed that he was lost when he ended up in possession of the stolen van. He was charged with grand theft of a vehicle, trafficking in 14 to 28 grams of methamphetamine, and possession of more than 20 grams of cannabis. Records show that Howtailing is currently being held at the Volusia County Jail on $30,500 bond. Number 10. Logan Barnhart. Cameras were rolling during the U.S. Capitol riot on January 6, 2021, as a man dragged a police officer down a flight of stairs. Then another rioter beat the cop with a flagpole. The attacker was high on the list of wanted suspects, but remained unidentified until 7 months after the attack, when a group of online sleuths called Sedition Hunters used facial recognition technology to pursue promising leads. During their search, the group obtained footage of the suspect without his sunglasses on, which led to a major break in the case. They searched the image on a facial recognition site, which yielded photos of a 40-year-old bodybuilder from Michigan named Logan Barnhart. He appeared on bodybuilding websites, photography portfolios, and on the covers of steamy romance novels, including one titled Stepbrother Unsealed, a bad boy military romance. The man in the photo certainly resembled the suspect, but it was Barnhart's Instagram content that pointed most strongly to his possible involvement in the riot. In addition to posting right-wing memes and shirtless thirst trap images, his profile included photos of him wearing a hat and sweatshirt that matched the description of the suspect's attire. The Sedition Hunters passed their findings on to law enforcement, and the FBI arrested Barnhart. He pleaded guilty to assaulting an officer in exchange for prosecutors agreeing to drop several other charges, and is scheduled to be sentenced in early 2023. Barnhart faces up to 20 years in prison and possible fines. Number 9. Kevin Gibson. In April 2016, officers in Miami Beach spotted a man drinking in public and questioned him. They searched him and found 70 grams of marijuana packaged into small bags, presumably in preparation for customers celebrating 420. Identified as 58-year-old Kevin Gibson, the suspect was charged with drinking in public, possession, and intent to sell, and spent the rest of the stoner holiday in jail. Many wondered why he was sporting a literal half-beard in his mugshot, as if he had been interrupted in the middle of shaving. But this wasn't the first time Gibson made news headlines for his unusual mugshots. The arrest came in 2017, a little over a year after Gibson first went viral. This time around, he faced felony narcotics charges. But he had a long rap sheet, dating back to long before his beard caught nationwide attention. His long list of convictions includes burglary, robbery, grand theft, kidnapping, disorderly intoxication, battery, trespassing, loitering, and dealing cocaine and marijuana. A booking photo from when Gibson was incarcerated between the two more recent arrests shows that he gave up his unusual facial hair while in the custody of the Florida Department of Corrections. Nobody seems to know the story behind his wild look. At first, some wondered if he was interrupted in the middle of shaving, but he sported the half-beard in more than one mugshot, indicating that he must prefer it. Number 8. Malik Jones. In a horrific act of violence that was captured on camera, a Chicago teenager named Malik Jones delivered a deadly blow to the head of 62-year-old father of 12, Defino Mora, in 2012. Mora did nothing to deserve his fate. He was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time while collecting aluminium cans and scrap metal when he became the target of a sick game called Pick 'em Out and Knock 'em Out that Jones was playing with two of his friends. Jones punched Mora in the head while his buddies Nicholas Ayala and Anthony Malcolm filmed the attack with his cell phone for social media. The force of the blow sent Mora to the ground, causing him to hit his head on the concrete. In the video, the impact, or as the prosecution described it, the loud crack of Mora's head hitting the pavement, could be heard. As Mora lay helplessly on the ground with a bleeding head wound, Jones and his friends could be heard laughing as they left the victim to die. Jones and Ayala returned to the scene a few minutes later, stole $60 out of Mora's wallet, and once again chose not to seek medical help for the ailing victim. Mora was found clinging to life and was rushed to a nearby hospital, where he died from his injuries. The Facebook video posted, captured by Jones and his friends, helped investigators identify the accused perpetrators. All three teens were ordered held without bail while awaiting trial on charges of robbery and first-degree murder. In July 2013, almost exactly a year after the crime, Anthony Malcolm was convicted as charged and sentenced to 30 years in prison. While Malcolm did not deliver the fatal blow that killed Mora, the judge made it clear that he committed a crime by failing to seek help for the victim. The same held true for Nicholas Ayala, who pleaded guilty in early 2014 and is currently serving a 27-year prison sentence. The case finally came to a long-awaited end in 2017 when Malik Jones pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 33 years in prison. He received a 25-year term for the murder, along with 8 additional years for robbery, which essentially means that he threw away the bulk of his adulthood to a dumb decision to try acting cool on social media. Number 7. James Feeblecorn. In 2015, concerned residents in Randolph, New York saw a man doing donuts in his yard and called the police. Officers charged 59-year-old James Feeblecorn with driving under the influence and several other offenses and was released to a sober third party. The local press published news of Feeblecorn's arrest, along with a mugshot that appeared to show an amused grin on the suspect's face. History repeated itself the very next day when neighbors reported seeing the suspect doing donuts in his front yard, leaving their trampoline pool and gazebo splattered with mud. Feeblecorn told officers that he was trying to get rid of the grass in his front yard and was once again arrested, this time on a fourth-degree mischief charge. Instead of releasing him on his own recognizance, the judge imposed bail and Feeblecorn was taken to jail. The local media once again published his booking photo, which shows an even bigger smile on his face. News stations and journalists outside the region started picking up on the story, with one blogger describing Feeblecorn as the Homer Simpson of drunk driving. 3 weeks later, he was in trouble yet again, but not for doing donuts. He was charged with violating an order of protection according to WIVB, but no other details were offered. And for a third time, Feeblecorn grinned for the camera while in a situation where smiling is the last thing on most people's minds. Number 6. Jeremy Pauley. In 2022, a 40-year-old man from Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, named Jeremy Pauley, attracted widespread disgust over both his mugshot and his alleged crimes. The self-proclaimed human blood artist and collector of oddities allegedly bought and stole human body parts on the black market, and his tattooed eyeball and tattoo-covered face only add to the already chilling and disturbing nature of the situation. Pauley's first arrest came in 2022 after police in East Pennsboro Township received a tip about body parts being bought and sold out of his home. During a search of the house, authorities reportedly found a skull, 3 brains, 4 hands, and buckets filled with organs. According to court documents, Pley bought the body parts from an Arkansas woman named Candace Chapman Scott, who is accused of stealing the remains from a mortuary where they were supposed to be cremated. Scott is facing federal charges in connection with her alleged crimes. Further investigation revealed evidence that Pley was connected to a separate network of body snatchers and corpse peddlers. Over a 4-year period lasting from 2018 to 2022, a 55-year-old New Hampshire resident named Cedric Lodge allegedly stole human remains from Harvard Medical School's Anatomical Gifts program, where he worked as a morgue manager. Much like the Arkansas case, most of the bodies had been donated for research. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Lodge sold the body parts with the help of his wife, 63-year-old Denise Lodge. Court documents allege that he even allowed some of his buyers to visit the morgue he worked at so they could pick out which body parts they wanted. The ill-gotten human remains were then harvested and shipped to buyers through the mail. Federal prosecutors believe the couple dealt primarily with 2 clients: 44-year-old Katrina McLean of Salem, Massachusetts, 46-year-old Joshua Taylor of West Lawn, Pennsylvania. Pley is accused of buying body parts from Cedric's co-conspirators and reselling them on Facebook's marketplace. He also exchanged more than $100,000 with 52-year-old Matthew Lampe of East Bethel, Minnesota, who is listed as a federal defendant along with the rest of the suspects in the Harvard case, including Pley. Pley's advertised inventory included bones, teeth, and organs. According to an affidavit, he initially claimed he bought the parts legally, but intercepted packages and other evidence suggested otherwise. He faces both state and federal charges. In June of 2023, federal court documents revealed that Pley had agreed to take a plea deal. He'll plead guilty to 1 count each of conspiracy to commit interstate transportation of stolen property and interstate transportation of stolen property. According to the agreement, he would face up to 15 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, along with a fine of up to $500,000. But the consequences proved not to be nearly that far-reaching, and in 2024, Pley was sentenced to 2 years of probation. Number 5. Casey Anthony. Casey Anthony seemed to take motherhood in stride after experiencing an unplanned pregnancy at just 20 years old. Her daughter, Kaylee, was born in 2006, and the two lived with Casey's parents, Cynthia and George, at their home in Orlando, Florida. For the next 2.5 years, Casey woke up in the morning every Monday through Friday, got Kaylee dressed, and left for her job at Universal Studios. She took Kaylee with her, dropping the little girl off at her nanny's apartment along the way, or so the Anthony family believed. As it turned out, Casey lied about having a job almost the entire time. She had stopped working at Universal Studios shortly after Kaylee was born and hadn't held a paying job since. But nobody in the family noticed until Casey and Kaylee left the house in June 2008 and failed to return that evening as usual. Casey didn't come home for over a month, and Kaylee was never seen again. During that time, Casey stayed with her boyfriend, but told her parents that she was on a series of work trips and staying with Kaylee's nanny, Zenaida Zani Fernandez Gonzalez. Eventually, Cynthia demanded to know where Kaylee was, and Casey claimed that Zani the nanny had kidnapped her. This too was a lie, but Casey stuck to her story, even after Cynthia called the police in a panic. It wasn't until detectives had Casey take them to her workplace that she admitted she no longer worked at Universal Studios. But she continued to insist that Kaylee had been kidnapped for the next several months, even after the authorities concluded that something much different had happened and charged Casey with first-degree murder. By then, it would be fair to say that Casey was the most hated woman in America. The case took the nation by storm, while throngs of complete strangers gathered outside the Anthony home, demanding to know what happened to Kaylee and where she was. Some of these long-awaited answers finally came in December 2008, when Kaylee's remains were discovered on the edge of a forest near the Anthony home. But medical examiners were unable to determine a cause of death due to the highly decomposed state of the remains. The state of Florida nevertheless moved forward with its murder case against Casey, with the full support of the raging public. In cases like this, people understandably want someone to pay. Another 3 years passed before the case finally went to trial in 2011. The prosecution pursued the death penalty, and the public seemed equally out for blood. According to the state, Casey felt burdened by the demands of motherhood, and wanted to be free of her responsibilities so she could party and sleep around to her heart's content. But every witness that was called to the stand testified that Casey was a loving mother and a good provider, which threw a major wrench into the state's argument that she was abusive and negligent. Included among these supporters were two of Casey's ex-boyfriends, which only further called the state's theory into question. And Casey had some supporters, including her defense attorney, Jose Baez, who dropped a bombshell in his opening argument. Baez claimed that Kaylee had succumbed to a terrible accident in a family's backyard pool after going outside alone while Kaylee was napping, and that both Casey and her father George had lied about what happened out of a misguided fear that being honest would lead to the discovery of some dark family truths that George wanted to keep secret at all costs, including the possibility of his own daughter being sent to her death. To some, the argument seemed like a ridiculous attempt to explain away the actions of the country's most terrible mother. But as the trial wore on for nearly 2 months, Baez presented convincing enough evidence for the jury to acquit Casey on both murder and manslaughter charges, including the fact that drowning is a leading cause of death among young people in Florida, and that Kaylee was perfectly capable of going outside and getting into the pool on her own. The only crime Casey was found guilty of was lying to the police, and the judge sentenced her to probation. The not guilty verdict symbolized a huge blow to the state, but in the minds of many, Casey was guilty, regardless of the outcome in court. Many people continue to feel this way today, but the bottom line is that the prosecution failed to prove its argument. Speaking publicly about the case for the first time in a Peacock documentary that was released in 2022, Casey maintained her innocence and insisted that her family's dark secrets played a major role in all the lies she told, including the fake job at Universal Studios, the existence of Zanny the nanny, and the story about Kaylee supposedly being kidnapped. Oddly, one thing Casey remained silent about all along was the identity of Kaylee's father, which remains a mystery to this day. All anyone knows is that she turned up pregnant after going to a party, and George Anthony was eliminated as the possible father via a DNA test following speculation stemming from the family's well-kept legacy of secrets. Number 4. Callum Von Moga. Australian actor and bodybuilder Callum Von Moga is one of the most widely recognized members of the fitness industry. The 3-time Mr. Universe winner has modeled for Gucci, portrayed Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 2018 movie Bigger, starred in the documentaries Generation Iron 2 and Callum Von Moga Unbroken, and has amassed an Instagram following of more than 3.3 million fans. But Von Moga's successes have been punctuated by a number of personal and professional struggles and failures. In recent years, he's developed a reputation for his increasingly erratic behavior. The first signs of his life being on a downward spiral began with unexplained social media absences and strange posts. In early 2022, Von Moga rear-ended another vehicle in Melbourne and got into a verbal altercation with the victim. He allegedly stabbed the victim's tire and fled the scene. A few months later, he was accused of crashing his motorcycle into a car and driving away. In another incident, cops caught him with meth and other contraband as well as testosterone. He reportedly told officers that he had pumped so much testosterone into his body over the years that he no longer produces it naturally and has to inject it just to stay at a normal level. Shortly after that, Von Moga fell out a second-story window and was seriously injured. After undergoing spinal surgery, he checked into rehab for his addiction and mental health issues. He resolved his criminal cases without any serious convictions, which will enable him to continue traveling between Australia and the US for work as he continues working to get his life on track. Number 3. Charles Dion McDowell. In late 2018, the Escambia County Sheriff's Office in Florida arrested 31-year-old Charles Dion McDowell on a slew of drug-related charges, including possession of meth and cocaine with intent to sell, manufacture or deliver drugs, possessing drug equipment, and fleeing police. The agency posted McDowell's details and mugshot on Facebook, but people were more shocked by his massive neck than they were by the allegations he faced, which were pretty standard and far from surprising when it comes to criminal cases out of Florida. The mugshot garnered an onslaught of humorous comments, with one social media user writing that McDowell should sell advertising space on his neck. Another commenter joked about the suspect being up to his neck in charges. There was also a comment telling people to leave the man alone because next time it could be you. McDowell's mugshot was shared over 250,000 times within a week of his arrest, when he got arrested again and another mugshot circulated. This time he was nabbed in Alabama after cops laid spike strips to disable his vehicle during a high-speed chase. He was charged with more drug offenses and driving with a revoked license. Naturally, the jokes about his neck continued. The unexpected attention brought about potential opportunities for McDowell, including talks about a possible MMA or boxing appearance. He also became Instagram famous. Trouble found McDowell again in early 2019 when his bond in Florida was revoked due to his Alabama charges. His stardom was short-lived and he seems to have remained mostly out of the spotlight since then. Number 2. Ivy Moore. While responding to what sounded like a routine domestic disturbance at 3 a.m. in August 2018, police in Lincoln, Nebraska quickly realized that the situation was much more serious than they had initially thought. 26-year-old Ivy Moore told 911 dispatchers that her boyfriend was refusing to leave her apartment, and officers arrived to find the man suffering from a hand injury with blood on his shirt. Moore's boyfriend told the cops that he and Ivy were arguing about a woman from his past during the early morning hours. He claimed that he was packing his things to leave when Ivy suddenly swung at him with a 3-foot-long Japanese sword. The boyfriend threw his hands up to shield his face from the blade and was slashed in the process. Thankfully, his injuries weren't serious enough to require hospitalization. According to police, Ivy seemed intoxicated when they spoke with her at the scene. She was arrested on suspicion of domestic assault and using a weapon to commit a felony. These are some serious allegations, yet the young woman was all smiles in her mugshot. While only Ivy knew what was going on in her mind at the time, the internet was quick to notice that she looked unusually happy for someone who was in police custody. She probably stopped smiling shortly after the picture was taken when she learned that she was being held on $7,500 bail. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Britney Dawn Davis. Britney Dawn Davis was a self-proclaimed fitness coach and nutrition expert who built a successful business selling personalized diet, workout, and nutrition plans on social media. For prices ranging from $92 to $300, the 30-year-old from Texas provided customers with what she claimed was a personalized fitness and diet plan. Each plan included weekly one-on-one check-ins and adjustments to the regimen as needed. Davis made a small fortune after first advertising her services in 2014. But many customers noticed that their plans seemed to be of a one-size-fits-all nature, contrary to Davis's claims, and in many cases the plans failed to help people achieve their weight loss and fitness goals. Others weren't getting the feedback and check-ins that were promised along with their plan, or were receiving generic comments like, "You've got this, babe," and "That's my girl." It wasn't exactly the expert advice they had hoped for. One bride-to-be, Angie Bullock, paid for Britney's services in hopes of losing some weight before her wedding. She told the Washington Post that when she realized she had received a one-size-fits-all plan, she tried to reach Davis to no avail and was eventually blocked from the influencer's social media. Bullock and other customers who felt duped eventually received refunds after they began to raise the alarm and raise awareness to what they believed was a scam. Customers began calling Davis out publicly after comparing their plans and realizing that they weren't personalized. In response to the mounting complaints, she went on Good Morning America and explained that she jumped into an industry with no instruction manual. She later apologized to her followers in a video post, but has allegedly failed to fully refund unsatisfied customers. In early 2022, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed a lawsuit against Davis for allegedly deceiving and misleading thousands of customers. He also accused her of selling weight loss plans to anorexia survivors, which she has denied doing. Davis still retains influencer status, but has switched her focus from fitness to Christianity. She now hosts religious conferences and retreats.
9. Tristan Hile. During the pre-dawn hours one morning in July 2023, police in Huron, Ohio were alerted to an alarm that was going off at a local credit union. At first, responding officers didn't see anything suspicious. but alarms typically don't activate for no reason, so the cops continued to investigate the scene. And during the search, they began hearing strange noises from the direction of the credit union's drive-thru. It sounded like heavy footsteps and was coming from inside the ceiling in the section of the building that sits over the drive-thru lanes. A large recycle bin was placed on the pavement beneath an open hatch in the ceiling, and as officers stood back and observed, a backpack fell through the hatch and into the recycle bin. Then, moments later, a pair of feet dangled out of the opening and a grown man spilled into the receptacle. The alleged burglar, 27-year-old Tristan Hile, wisely showed that he was willing to cooperate with the police. But he was unable to obey their commands to get on the ground until they pulled him out of the bin. Huron Police Chief Terry Graham told local station Fox 8 that Hile had failed to access any money or valuables inside the bank and was empty-handed when he emerged from the ceiling. He was still charged with breaking and entering though, as well as possession of criminal tools and safe-cracking. 8. Unimpressed customers ignore thief. A man who tried to rob the Nail First salon in Atlanta on July 3, 2023, left empty-handed after the people inside paid no attention to him. Surveillance footage showed the suspect entering the salon in blue jeans, sunglasses, and a backward-facing blue baseball cap. He stood at the doorway with a bag in his hand and yelled for everyone to get on the floor and give him their money. Customers in the waiting area could be seen staring at the suspect, but were seemingly unfazed as they ignored his repeated commands to get down and pay up. After failing to get the patrons to listen, the man walked toward another part of the salon and tried bossing someone else around. But it still didn't work, and he left the business with no more cash than he walked in with. He then fled the scene in a silver sedan and hasn't been captured yet. But police are hoping members of the public come forward with information about the man's identity so they can hold him accountable for the attempted robbery. 7. Patrick Hanawahine. A 46-year-old Hawaii resident named Kevin Fitzgerald was sitting in his truck outside a gas station in Kaneohe, Oahu one evening in March 2023 when a man opened the door and asked him for money. The suspect, later identified as 30-year-old Patrick Hanawahine, grabbed Fitzgerald's wallet, phone, and cash from the vehicle's cup holder. A brief struggle ensued between the two men before Hanawahine broke free and rushed into the passenger seat of a nearby truck. Fitzgerald managed to get some of his belongings back during the fight, but Hanawahine took his phone. But determined not to let the suspect get away with his crimes, Fitzgerald chased after the getaway vehicle. During the pursuit, the truck that Hanawahine was riding in rammed into Fitzgerald's truck, and someone fired multiple shots at the vehicle. Thankfully though, he was unharmed. Hanawahine initially got away, but was captured several days later. He faces a slew of charges, including second-degree attempted murder, first-degree robbery, carrying or possessing a loaded firearm on a public highway, and use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. Hanawahine pleaded not guilty to all charges and was held on $1 million bail. As it turned out, he was no stranger to the law. He has at least 3 convictions on his record, including a terroristic threatening charge from 2018, as well as theft and burglary convictions stemming from 2 separate incidents in 2012. 6. Armed thief throws temper tantrum. Houston woman named Tina was standing by her car and talking on her phone in her workplace parking lot one day in July 2023 when an armed thief approached her from behind. He ordered Tina to hand over her keys, but when she refused, the suspect tried going into her pockets and purse, only to have his hand swatted away by the victim. And at one point, the suspect knocked Tina's medicine out of her purse. She seemed remarkably calm in surveillance footage of the botched robbery and was later commended for maintaining her composure throughout the interaction. Tina remained on the phone with her son throughout the ordeal, and when she told her son to dial 911 and continued refusing to hand over any of her property to the thief, the suspect ripped her phone out of her hand and smashed it against the pavement. He then fled the scene on foot and remains at large. Police have since released the security video to the public in hopes that someone will be able to help them identify the suspect. 5. Richard Stiles. British pilot and career criminal Richard Stiles had a history of using his flying skills to move drugs around Europe. In 2003, he was caught trying to smuggle ecstasy tablets into Belgium. And while he was on the run from Belgian authorities later that year, he tried to drop a shipment of weed onto Jersey in the Channel Islands. Stiles was sentenced to 12 years in prison for his drug crimes. But during his time behind bars, he met a fellow inmate named Silvano Turchet, who would later become his partner in crime after their release. In 2017, Stiles and Turchet were arrested by Dutch authorities in a suspected people smuggling scheme. He was still awaiting trial on the charge in early 2022 when he was apprehended by Britain's National Crime Agency on suspicion of trying to smuggle 4 illegal Albanian immigrants into the United Kingdom. Stiles was then nabbed shortly after touching down at an airfield near Corby, Northamptonshire in a rented plane. And while being taken into custody, he joked about how he's usually arrested for drugs. Needless to say, the arresting agents were unamused by the distasteful humor. Investigators arrested Turchet after discovering that it helped organize the rental of the aircraft and paid to store it in a hangar. They believe the men coordinated with an Albanian man known as Tim K to arrange for the illegal immigrants to be picked up in Belgium and flown to England. A 43-year-old taxi driver named Vijaya Kumar Sivakumar was also arrested for his involvement in the smuggling scheme. The 3 men were each charged with 1 count of breaching immigration law. Stiles and Turchet admitted to the charge and received prison sentences of 7 years and 7.5 years. Sivakumar, on the other hand, was convicted by a jury and was only sentenced to 4.5 years behind bars. 4. Incompetent Irish hitman. In a pitifully miscalculated attempt on a rival gangster's life, an associate of a notorious crime boss known only as Mr. Flashy was shot in the buttocks and hand one evening in the Finglas suburb outside Dublin. The incident in question happened outside a shop in December 2022 amid an ongoing drug-related feud between a gang led by Mr. Flashy and a rival organization. Mr. Flashy was at the scene when the shooting occurred. At the time, he and the victim were under strict bail requirements while awaiting the outcomes of unrelated cases. Investigators believe that the 2 suspects knew that the pair were required to check in at the police station and lied in wait nearby. But the shooter clearly had very bad aim, and the attempted murder didn't go as planned. The suspects fled in a taxi, being driven by a 3rd suspect, but they didn't get far before the car collided with another vehicle. And afterward they fled the scene on foot. Social media users responded to the story with comments about how the incompetent hitman and the world's worst getaway driver made a hilariously terrible team with their combined lack of skills. At the time, the getaway driver was already facing a substantial prison sentence for a litany of other charges. When the story broke, authorities hadn't yet arrested the other 2 suspects and said that the matter was under investigation. The disturbing incident is just one of many incidences of violence that have happened amid the ongoing rivalry between the gangs. 3. Mark Cruz. A 27-year-old Florida man named Mark Cruz had at least 19 felony burglary, attempted burglary, and other convictions under his belt and was on parole for his previous crimes when he decided to steal a pickup truck in 2011. He deliberately crashed it into the entrance of a convenience store in Blackshire, hoping to loosen an ATM that was bolted to the floor. But when Cruz was unable to shake the machine free, he got back into the truck and drove into it 3 more times with the vehicle in reverse. Surveillance footage captured his numerous attempts to haul the ATM off before he finally gave up and fled the scene. A store clerk and a customer were standing nearby, watching in disbelief the entire time. Police caught up with Cruz a short while later, and during a search of the stolen vehicle they found a semi-automatic handgun. Cruz pleaded guilty to state-level charges of theft by receiving stolen property and first-degree criminal damage. Due to his lengthy criminal history, he was also federally charged in connection with the bungled robbery. He pleaded guilty to being an armed career criminal and being a felon in possession of a firearm. The judge sentenced him to a minimum of 15 years, which was generous considering how he could have gone away for life. Cruz was also sentenced to 10 years of probation in state court with the requirement to serve it after he finished his federal sentence. 2. Peter Silva. During the summer of 2018, a Hiram, Utah man named Peter Silva embarked on a bizarre crime spree that began outside a convenience store, where he tried forcing his way into a stranger's vehicle. Silva allegedly told the victim that he needed to charge his phone, but had fled the scene by the time police arrived. 7 hours later, Cache County deputies found a stolen vehicle abandoned along a highway with a 9mm handgun inside. And while investigating the scene, law enforcement received a call about a burglary in progress. They arrived at the address to find a civilian holding Silva at gunpoint. Inside Silva's pockets, deputies found drugs, drug paraphernalia, and a payroll check belonging to the homeowner. He also had debit and credit cards that didn't belong to him, and a set of keys belonging to the stolen vehicle that had been found on the roadside. While sitting in the interview room down at the sheriff's station, Silva suffered electrical burns to his fingers from tampering with a light switch plate in an apparent attempt to cause a power outage. He received treatment for his injuries at a nearby hospital and was then taken to the local jail, where he was booked on multiple charges. During the booking process, he tried to blend in with some volunteers as they left the building. Staff members caught up with him though and took him back inside. As part of a plea bargain, Silva admitted to 3 felony counts, including burglary, 1 gun-related count, and 1 drug charge. He also pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of trying to escape from custody. And in exchange for his cooperation, prosecutors agreed to drop 8 other charges. Silva could have faced up to 15 years in prison, but the homeowner who held him at gunpoint asked the court to extend leniency toward the convicted criminal. The compassionate request stemmed from the homeowner's desire for Silva to work toward overcoming his addictions and getting his life on the right track. While speaking to the judge, the victim explained that he and Silva were strangers before the botched burglary, but that he'd gotten to know the defendant and felt sympathetic toward him and his family for their struggles. It was a more forgiving stance than the judge would have taken otherwise, but Silva seemed genuinely grateful for the second chance. He apologized to the victim in court and said that he truly wanted to change this time, and hopefully he meant it. 1. Alan Slattery. Over a several-week period during the spring of 2021, a 67-year-old British man named Alan Slattery committed a string of bank robberies in East Sussex, England. He carried out the heist by handing tellers a handwritten note demanding money, but his penmanship was a problem during one robbery when the cashier was unable to decipher the note. When she couldn't figure out what it said, Slattery fled the scene. According to the police, the note stated, "Your screen won't stop what I've got. Just hand over the 10s and 20s, think about the customers." Then, about a week later, Slattery made off with a few $1,000s after robbing a bank in the seaside town of St. Leonard's. The cashier later told investigators that the suspect was mostly silent throughout the heist and that she was afraid for her life, so she handed over the cash in accordance with the note's demands. Unlike the cashier in Slattery's previous bank robbery, she was luckily able to read it. Another week or so later, Slattery tried to rob a third bank. This time, the teller outright refused to comply with his handwritten demand for cash, and Slattery fled the scene empty-handed. During his arrest, police found post-it notes matching the ones he'd used to carry out his crimes, along with a jacket that matched the clothing he was seen wearing during one of the robberies. Slattery pleaded guilty to 3 counts of robbery and was sentenced to 6 years, with a minimum of 4 years behind bars. He'll be eligible to serve the final 2 years of his term on supervised release.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather go viral on Instagram's Mug Shorties page or be caught breaking a major workplace rule on surveillance footage? Why would one be worse than the other? Let us know in the comments below, but be sure to subscribe first. See you soon. Bye.